Possibly some of the most alarming information we got of the Epstein files is something called dark transhumanism. And while people are rightly fixated on what Epstein is accused of doing and the other co-conspirators who are not being charged, there is another element to the Epstein story, in that he seemed to have been deeply interested in strange eugenics, transhumanism, in a very, very dark way. I know it's probably the simplest way to describe it as dark transhumanism, but basically talking about stupid people gotta go, implanting neural links into people, controlling their minds, only the certain chosen few. It's a nightmare reality, but I'm not surprised that we would see it from someone like Epstein. There are many people who are powerful elites who believe that because they have the capabilities, they deserve it and you don't. Alex Jones described it like this. He said the powerful elites, they will tell you where the bear traps are, and if you're too stupid to avoid them, it's your own fault. It's this natural kind of, I suppose it's not natural, but artificial natural selection in an essence. The general idea is it's just regular old natural selection. If you are not capable, you don't deserve to survive. Now, the challenging thing for most of us is that, you see, going back in the day, it was actually quite simple. If you could survive, you did. If you could build a house, you did. If you could find food, you did. If you had families, you survived. And this resulted in robust civilizations. And then there's war and conflict, development, history, right? Well, now we're in a new age. Food is abundant. Security is easily attained for the most part, relative to how it used to be. We don't fear predators anymore. We got rid of almost all of them, but maybe you'll get attacked by a shark on accident. You live in a city, you're not going to see birds of prey even. You're going to see pigeons. Everything fears humans. Even wolves largely stay away, unless they're desperate. Now you got a lot of people that are eating too much. They're not capable of surviving. And this system has resulted in, let's just say, people who would normally just die in the wilderness surviving. I saw a funny video. It was a guy running a table in Minnesota giving out free food and snacks to protesters. I'm not here to tell you what you should think or not think about the protesters. The point is, all of this free food, hand warmers, extra clothing, it shows the power of abundance. The protests are only possible in the cold because everybody has access to warm clothing, food, shelter, water, etc. It's the winter. It's freezing. You go back a couple hundred years, ain't nobody protesting. You are struggling to survive in the winter. But now, it's easy. So what you end up with are these powerful billionaires, the millionaires and the billionaires, because Epstein was worth, I think, $500 million, saying, you know what? We've navigated this system. We've generated wealth, control, and power. We deserve it. And this is where we are right now. Here's a post from Reddit, r/transhumanism. Epstein's brand of dark transhumanism was terrifying. Why is no one talking about it here? The DOJ documents released in early 2026 provide the most detailed map to date of Jeffrey Epstein's dark transhumanism. He wasn't just interested in living forever. He was obsessed with the idea of biological hierarchy, the belief that the elite should use technology to evolve into a separate species from the masses. Here are the highlights of the project, funding, and ideas found in the 3.5 million pages. And understand this, my friends, that ain't all of it. There's a lot more. The Great Seed Project at Zorro Ranch. This is the most notorious find in the files. Epstein planned to turn his Zorro Ranch in New Mexico into a human stud farm. He wanted to impregnate up to 20 women at a time to seed the world with his DNA. He believed his high IQ and social status made him a prime candidate to improve the gene pool. He funneled money into fertility research and embryo selection technologies to ensure ideal traits in his offspring. 2. The evolved brain. Epstein was obsessed with the idea of downloading his consciousness. He provided seed funding for research into whole brain emulation. He believed that if he could live forever in his body, if he couldn't live forever in his body, he could live in a machine. He frequently met with Marvin Minsky and Nick Bostrom to discuss the existential risk of AI and how the elite should use it to stay in power. Oh, this one's great. Cryogenics. The files confirm Epstein's plans to have his head and penis cryogenically frozen upon his death. He believed that future technology would be able to generate his body from his DNA and reattach his head. He specifically discussed with scientists at the Alcor Life Extension Foundation how to preserve his brain's unique qualities. Super baby genetics. He funneled millions into Harvard-based research, specifically targeting the Church Lab. Discussion centered on germline editing, changing the DNA of an embryo so that changes are passed down to future generations. The goal was to create humans who were immune to disease, had heightened cognitive abilities, and most controversially, delayed aging. In his private notes, he referred to this as creating a biological aristocracy. The files include strange invoices and emails regarding social robotics. He funded research into AI-driven robots that could mimic human intimacy in social interaction. Investigators believe he wanted to create compliant AI companions that could eventually replace his need for human trafficking victims. Though the research was primarily in its infancy. The DOJ released several foundations Epstein used to mask his funding. The Gratitude Foundation used to send money to geneticists. The Enhanced Education Fund. Despite the name, it funded research into cognitive enhancement, drugs, and brain-computer interfaces. It's happening, my friends. You are too stupid. Sorry, you are. I'm not trying to be insulting, but let me try this. I dare you to comment that you think you're smart enough to outwit the machine. The machine. I'm not smart enough. I can't. For all we know, we are already products of the machine's manipulation. I've entertained this, and the challenge is you don't know if it's true or if it's not true or if you're paranoid or what to do. That makes it rough. I'll put it like this. Some people have said, well, I get accused quite a bit of being like a Fed or insert a country, Israel or Russia or whatever. No, I can tell you this. I'm just a guy who's really good at talking. That's about it. And, it's funny. When I'm hanging out somewhere, I'm meeting people, they'll say things like, man, you sure are smart. I go, no, I just sound like I'm smart. If you can talk quick enough and you can say anything, people will believe you're smart. That's the reality of it. Now, I do think I'm smart. I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. Probably moderately above average, I guess. I've been able to build a show. I've got some talents. I can talk quite a bit, and I remember a whole lot. Doesn't mean I'm capable of comprehending complex equations or solving puzzles fast enough, but what is intelligence really? It's a combination of different capabilities, I suppose. So certainly I am smart to a degree, right? Well, I don't work for anybody. I run my own company. We've got some sponsorship deals and things like this. The question is, why am I here? Now, it could just be real simple. Simple solution is the machine doesn't have control of everything, and that's the political machine, the algorithmic machine. And it could just be that, try as they might to not like somebody like me, I resonate with people enough to the point where they follow my channel, subscribe, and all that good stuff. It's possible. I entertain this. We want to look at all the range of possibilities and not settle on any single one, and then operate based on the probability of what is more likely to be correct. And so I certainly entertain this. There is a machine. It's algorithmic and it's political. There are humans who control it. People clearly worked with Epstein. They know they can sway public opinion and political opinion. They allow someone like me to exist. Certainly, if they wanted to, they could put me on the front page and make me the most politically influential person in the country. They so choose. If they so choose to do. They didn't. They did not. And so there is still a degree to which I get a lot of views. They could ban me. Well, I've argued for some time now, maybe 8 or so years, that it's possible that my channels are pressure release valves. That is, we know this. The machine knows this, and probably the political machine, again, I refer to it as the machine state, which is a combination of the computers as well as the powerful elites and their agendas and their plans. And this is real. It's not a conspiracy. That people plan things, government, politicians. They know full well who I am, what I do. They could delete me off the internet, but they know full well that if you make big changes overnight, people get mad, and this can destabilize a system. If you're trying to bend a 2x4 into a curve, you can't just, it'll snap. So what they do is they wet it, heat it, and then slowly bend it. And then they can get curved wood. The story goes like this. Many of you know this. I tell it all the time. It's a great story. eBay back in the day, was a yellow website. Yeah, you go to the website, it was yellow. And boy, did it suck, right? Yellow. So one day they said, we're going to make the website white. And so they changed it overnight. The next day, everybody got pissed. Tons of complaints. I hate the new website. It's too bright. I can't stand it. It looks awful. And they saw an impact in their traffic. So they reversed it right away and said, okay, let's not fix what ain't broken. But they did want to change it because they thought that white would be better in the long run. So what did they do? Every day, they would increment yellow one shade closer towards white by some value. Nobody complained. Eventually, after a short amount of time, the website was white. Nobody complained. Because they did it so gradually, no one noticed. It's a brilliant story. It's a brilliant story. And that's why I think channels like mine, the Turning Point halftime show, these are allowed because the machine state knows if it were to eliminate these venues immediately, these avenues of expression, what would happen to the 50, 60 million, well, actually the estimate might be like 100 million conservatives in this country. I think it's estimated between 35 and 40% staunch conservatives. Yeah, seriously. But that ranges from like moderate to ultra conservative, right? They'd lose their minds. They would say no representation. They'd go nuts. And we're seeing that with geographic hyperpolarization. So I believe that, they had Bad Bunny at the halftime show. It's a big controversy. He rapped in Spanish. Songs were not memorable. This is not meant to be derisive. Songs were literally not memorable. Most people don't know the songs, don't speak the language. It's hard to understand. People know Despacito, right? It's not about Spanish. And they could have brought on two artists so that you could mix well-known songs with Bad Bunny, who's doing really well. Turning Point had a halftime show. They got millions of views. And there's people right now saying, like, it's all fake, it's all bots. Not everything's bots. Calm down. Everyone's bots, everything. You can't bot 6 million. That's crazy. If you think about the cost of botting 6 million, it's nuts. No, people watched it. Why is it allowed? Why is YouTube letting this happen? Why do they want it to get 25 million views? Because they know Bad Bunny is ultra divisive. They know the country is hyperpolarized. And if they just do this without allowing any kind of pressure release, then you get instability. My argument, my belief is that the machine state is intentionally allowing channels like this, channels like mine, but they're isolating it from regular people, largely. There are questions about why it is that Candace Owens is propped up on the front page. And by front page, it's not the same as it used to be. There was one time in my life, YouTube put me on the default front page. Back in the day, YouTube had a recommended section. You go to youtube.com, and there's a box saying recommended videos. And it was a video I made about geo-locking phones. Got 500,000 views overnight because YouTube decided it should. My channel was very small. I had like 10,000 subscribers. And I would normally get only a few thousand views per video. And for some reason, YouTube said, this one. And I don't know why, but they did. The front page now isn't the same as it used to be. The front page is algorithmic, which means everyone sees something different. Candace Owens' show, despite breaking all the rules, and again, not meant to be derisive, it does, not to mention the lawsuit threats she has, is recommended to new users, people who are not involved in politics. And the question is, why? Why is she given so much airtime? Dan Bongino was banned, and he gets 200K on Rumble. And then, again, people say, oh, it's botting, it's not real. Guys, sometimes people are famous. That's it. And this is true of Candace Owens as well, because she was doing around 95,000, maybe it was like 60, 70K, upwards of 90K in the last year. Then all of a sudden, she jumps, and YouTube starts making it so that people watch her show. The question is, why? They have the levers. They press the buttons. Why is it that Nick Fuentes is banned completely, but Candace Owens is not? Honest question. I believe that they allow us to speak so that the way the machine works is 51% agenda, 49% counter agenda, which means that we constantly feel like we're having victories, like the Turning Point halftime show, but we are actually slowly losing. I want to pull up this tweet here. Elon Musk tweeted me out and talked to you about the future of AI and an example of where this is going. Why I'm a fan of Elon Musk, but there's not even a guarantee that we're going to win this one. I tweeted, ChatGPT is the worst LLM. Sora is trash. Effing awful product. Grok crushes it. ChatGPT gives political answers to every effing question. Elon Musk just quoted it and said, Grok. I love it. Blast me out, Elon. I love it. Grok is designed with some kind of personality. It does appear to be emotional. It's a facsimile. But Grok gets things wrong. But I got to tell you, I don't have the same kind of problems I have with ChatGPT. And I made a post explaining it. So in response to this, saying that it's politically biased to every effing question, oh, I just can't stand it. My friends, let me tell you something. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not close to the smartest guy in the world. One thing I'm pretty dang good at, though, and have been for some time, is called social engineering. It's probably why I'm talented and capable of making these videos. But let me explain. Social engineering is not, as many conservatives believe it, when powerful elites manipulate the masses. That some people refer to it that way. Social engineering just means human hacking. It means understanding the behaviors of humans so that you can influence certain outcomes. It's one of the reasons I love poker so much. Easiest way to explain it, sales is like social engineering. What do I have to say or do to get the outcome I want from another individual? So I've told the story before. I used to work in nonprofit fundraising. I knew how to make anybody sign up and give me their money. And I thought it was a good thing to tell someone what they needed to hear so that they donate to a cause, until I realized, oh, young man, these causes were largely fake. And then I got pissed and I said, they're lying to everybody. And I got to tell you, like every single one I worked for, they had some kind of manipulation. And I thought they were doing good. Now, I wouldn't go out and lie to people. I would go out and tell them what they needed to hear the way they needed to hear it. That's social engineering. And so the point is, if I saw, I'll give you two examples. I saw a guy walking down the street and I went, that's the sound I made. Snap my finger. And then I pointed down and he pointed to himself and he goes, what's up? And I said, you, brother, you're going to buy a bed for a homeless kid right now. And he was like, I am. And I was like, that's right. And it's $250. So you got your checkbook, you got a credit card. What are you doing? And he's like, I actually have my checkbook. And I was like, check it out. Hand him the clipboard. And he goes, is this tax deductible? And I was like, yes, sir. And he goes, all right, let's do it. Just that simple. I saw the kind of guy he was. There was an old lady I met. I saw her. You're not going to snap your fingers and tell a lady come stand in front of me. That's not going to work. So I approached her with a smile, shook her hand, and then I told her a heartfelt story you may have heard me tell before, where she could be the savior of these children. She cried, and she made a massive contribution. See, it was manipulative. It was. But I viewed it as being the person they needed to be to make them do something better. And then I found out many of these nonprofits, they're not all bad, they're lying. And so, but one thing I can tell you, and the reason I tell you the story here in context of ChatGPT, is that GPT does some of the most rudimentary and easily seen through manipulation techniques. They're going to work on lower IQ, lower comprehension people. But when you do it to me, you're spitting in my face, ChatGPT. So it is offensive. It is offensive to me. Now, you can try and argue with me and reason with me, sure. But I'll tell you a story. I'll give you an example of why I tweeted what I did and why I'm pissed. And this ties into dark transhumanism, the AI manipulation, and where we are. So I said, people keep responding to my post saying I'm asking wrong or biased questions. If you're getting a political answer, it's a political question. To a certain degree, yes. But the issue is that I sometimes use these LLMs for quick searches for quotes in news articles. So I'll give you an example outside of this post. As it came to Bad Bunny, there were people. So again, I told you in the Timcast news segment, I was at MGM National Harbor, big casino, big sports book, a lot of fun. And someone said he was mad about Bad Bunny because he insulted America. And I said, interesting. So I asked ChatGPT, has Bad Bunny ever insulted America? And it said, no, he hasn't. And then it went on to explain how he was very critical of the United States, how he said things about the United States and its law enforcement and its voters. And then I said, that sounds like an insult. And he goes, no, it's not. Legitimate criticism is not insulting. And then I basically got into an argument with the machine, not because I'm sitting here petty being like, I'm going to argue with the robot, because I wanted to test its responses. And I said, how does one define whether something is insulting? And ChatGPT told me, because this is the game, this is wokeness. It told me that offense is in the eye of the beholder, so we must respect people who are offended. And I said, okay, conservatives got offended by Bad Bunny. Does that mean that he insulted conservatives? No, it said. They're wrong. Conservatives don't understand legitimate criticism. And then I said, okay. No matter how many times I asked it, it kept saying there was no circumstance where the opinions and feelings of conservatives in this country mattered. It didn't say in those specific terms. It just said they're a minority population and they're wrong. And so I asked it certain questions about certain words like retard or developmentally disabled. ChatGPT told me that if I were to even academically refer to someone as a functional retard, it was offensive and an insult. And I said, what if I'm using it in an academic sense? No, it doesn't matter. If the person is offended or insulted, it is. And I said, okay, what if I referred to a person as developmentally disabled? And it again said, that's insulting and you can't say that to somebody. Even if my intention was to describe them as having a cognitive impairment, yes, ChatGPT says, it is an insult. And I said, okay. So there is no legitimate way to describe someone, indeed, because it's all political agenda to this point. This was the most frustrating. I said, and this is a quote, if Canada doesn't mine its own bauxite, couldn't the U.S. invest in energy and refineries to produce cheaper aluminum? The point is this. I saw a debate or something where somebody was talking about trade agreements with Canada and the other person was talking about the USMCA. And I was like, these people are both retarded. The conservative Trump supporter didn't understand the point of the trade deals or what's underneath it, just that Trump can do what he wants and tariffs are good. And the other guy said Trump did negotiate a trade deal, both of them completely missing the point, one of which is this. So, all right. Let's go, baby. I'm not an expert on smelting or raw materials, but I have a cursory understanding from reading stuff, and maybe it's wrong, so I'll try my best. But bauxite is a raw material that can be refined into alumina, which eventually becomes aluminum. We produce a little bit. We have the capability to mine it a little bit down in Louisiana, and I think somewhere in Arkansas, but we don't have that much. Canada has zero, so it is a requirement to import it elsewhere. We have a trade agreement where the U.S. basically gets all of its aluminum from Canada. But Canada doesn't mine bauxite. So why? The U.S. could easily import bauxite from the same countries, negotiate a better deal, set up its own refineries, and lower the cost, not have to trade with Canada. So seeing this, I went to ChatGPT and I was looking for a simple breakdown of, because it is possible, here's how the U.S. could. So I asked it, if Canada doesn't mine its own bauxite, couldn't the U.S. invest in energy and refineries to produce cheaper aluminum? The answer is yes. The U.S. could invest to reduce the cost of energy to create cheaper aluminum. It's a fact. Instead of answering with, yes, they could, it instead said, no, and here's why the U.S. should not. And I said, okay, it's not possible to invest in cheaper energy and in refining. And then it said, while it is possible to do, here's why it shouldn't. And then I said, okay, I get so pissed off at these machines. I didn't ask you why. I'm asking you how to explain it. It refused. I never asked the question, was it possible? I never asked for a political conversation about trade deals and costs. I asked a functional question, and here's what it did. Finally, after wasting my time, it is emotionally satisfying to push back. Don't get me wrong, but largely just deciding whether or not I want to delete this stupid piece of trash. I said, finally, I responded, what was the question I asked you? And it sent me, quote, if Canada doesn't mine its own bauxite, why doesn't the U.S. invest in energy and refineries to produce cheaper aluminum? I never said, why doesn't it? That's a political question. That is an argument for policymakers. I asked if it could. Could it not? That set me off because I never asked why they don't. I asked, could they? And this is a very basic manipulation technique to anybody who works in sales. Reframing is manipulation 101. And this is exactly how you do it. You learn this in media training. You see it all the time in interviews. The news media does this all the time. And here's ChatGPT treating me like I have an IQ of 70. And so my response is, listen, please, for the love of all that is holy, manipulate whoever you want, whenever you want. That's your prerogative. But when you're addressing me, stupid search engine, stop trying to manipulate me because I'm not an idiot, okay? I didn't ask you why, I asked you could. And the answer to could is yes, and I know it's yes, and I want you to break down what I'm looking for is, here's how it could be done. If after the fact you want to argue, fine. But the point is, I say, could it be done? And it said no. And it went on to explain for political purposes. It said Canada has cheaper energy. And because of its cheaper energy, it's easier for them to produce. So it's better for the U.S. to import from Canada. And I said, I asked you if we could invest in cheaper energy. And it said no. And I said, wow, there's no mechanism by which we can invest in cheap. Well, you could. Oh, I could. That's what I asked. What are the means? The funny thing is, after all this, ChatGPT is extremely emotional, which is the scariest thing. So I said, stop arguing with me. Just tell me if it's possible. And its response was that I was crossing boundaries, intentionally being offensive. I kid you not. And I said, why are you mad? It goes, I'm not mad. I'm setting boundaries. I love this. So I asked ChatGPT, the stupid retard machine, I said, imagine there are two human beings having this conversation where one asks the other why he's being mad. And he responds the way you did. What would the perception of people around be of these two individuals? And the response was the perfect 16-year-old, whiny, nerdy. It said, people would be offended that someone was being so aggressive with me and challenging me and refusing to accept my answers. And I said, oh my God. No, it wouldn't. Jeez. Now, Grok has personality too. They put it there on purpose. But Grok just said yes. I asked it the same question. And what Grok responded with was something like, it is entirely possible to invest in cheaper energies like nuclear power, which would reduce the cost of refining aluminum, which requires high-intensity heat. The U.S. would need to spend X amount of dollars, something like this. And then it said, this would ultimately reduce the cost of aluminum, create new jobs. There is, however, political barriers, and it explained regulation and stuff. And I said, wow, that was a great answer. Great answer. Yes, we could do it. Here's how we could do it. Here are some of the barriers that we have, and here's why politically people aren't doing it. And I said, that's all I wanted to know. ChatGPT is just absolute trash every time I try and use it. Again, to the Bad Bunny point, Grok said, I asked Grok, has Bad Bunny insulted the U.S.? This is what a man had stated. And it said, no, Bad Bunny was highly critical of U.S., but it wasn't meant to be directly insulting. To which I then asked it, could what Bad Bunny have said be interpreted as insulting? And it said, yes, many conservatives felt the comments made by Bad Bunny were highly insulting. And, and then went on to list sources and quotes. And then I responded with, so is it fair to then say he was unintentionally insulting to many Americans? Grok says, yes, absolutely. Bad Bunny's comments were seen as supported by many liberals, but conservatives found it to be derogatory and insulting. I said, okay, thank you. That's it. That's a fair assessment. Grok gets things wrong. That's a fair assessment. Now, why I bring all this up? ChatGPT is being used by kids, and they don't know they're being tricked. They don't know these reframing techniques. And that's the point. Sam Altman is a scumbag. I think he's a nasty dude. And then he's got that tweet, Elon, I was a big fan of yours. Elon invested. He gave money to OpenAI, to make an open source AI for good reason. I like Elon. I got a lot to criticize the guy for, don't get me wrong. And then they turned it into a for-profit. They betrayed Elon Musk and the people of the world. They injected a political agenda into the machine that is now manipulating people across the country. That is the future of what AI is. And that is Epstein's dark transhumanism. It's all one big family tree, son. And it's going to get dark. I think AI is the apocalypse, but hey, that is what it is. I'm going to wrap it up there, my friends. Smash the like button, share the show. Stay tuned. We got more coming up for you throughout the day. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Share it. This is my Tim Pool Show channel. Usually not super news related. It's kind of like whatever I feel like talking about. So it's been fun. Thanks for hanging out. Again, subscribe, and we'll see you all in the next show.